part of us. Whether we know it or not, we are constantly influenced by the myths we've read and heard. After all, when broken down, myths are just stories with a central set of morals, morals that the author deemed important to their specific culture and audience. Now, whether these morals fall in line with yours is completely subjective and depends on several factors. How relevant is this myth to me, to society? Is it something I can relate to and apply to my everyday life? These questions are important to a reader and are the building blocks to truly understanding whether a myth is at all useful to you. These are the same questions I asked myself weeks ago when I was assigned the myth of Talibak, a reclusive Eskimo shaman who is destined to save his people through communication with the spirit world. Although the myth of Talibak does portray some ideas that are still relevant today, it is mostly an outdated and relatively useless myth focused on a group of people too secluded to make a broad impact on outside readers. Therefore, we can conclude that myths written above the Arctic Circle are less likely to impact those below it, making them significantly less relevant towards today's modern citizen. Although the myth of Talibak does bring up some relevant issues that apply to modern society, such as the focus on resourcefulness, it fails to come up with more than one of these issues, therefore leaving readers bored and uninterested. It's not their fault. The Inuit people have serious challenges to face during everyday life that are more intense than we can imagine. Between the weather, scarce food, and overall isolation, the Inuit people are practically in a different world. What we can take away from this myth is the overwhelming focus on resourcefulness, something that all people are trying desperately to adapt to in modern society. In the myth of Talibak, we see the shaman save every little piece of the animals he kills, such as the caribou. All waste is bad. All waste is bad waste in their minds, something that could have helped modern society if it had adapted to such ideals. Where the myth really starts to go sour for some readers is when the concept of shamanism is fully developed. Shamans are religious figures who through their spiritual power are able to connect with the spirit world and make the impossible possible. We see this when Talibak magically makes a seal appear from desolate waters. Now, this doesn't necessarily sit well with many readers who, to say the least, have very different religious beliefs. Some readers may even see the concept of shamanism outlandish and repulsive. This stereotype of shamans being spooky and dangerous is one that has escalated in recent decades, pushing individuals away from these foreign traditions and more towards their current religious beliefs. This really narrows the impact of the myth, rerouting many readers who are against the ideas of shamanism, therefore making it irrelevant to modern society. Tying in with this idea of shamanism, the myth overall seems to be very outdated. As we progress as humans, so do our stories and ideals. As we very well know, the ideas of yesterday are often frowned upon today. Just look at segregation in the U.S. Although nothing in the myth of Talibak is as awful as segregation, you understand my point. With time comes change, and this myth may just be too old to really enact any response from its readers. Again, this is subjective. Some may believe that old writings and myths such as this one have serious morals and messages we can learn from. To an extent, I agree with that statement. Some ancient myths, such as the Bible and Iliad, provide amazing insight into how to live your life both successfully and unsuccessfully. They provide both positive and negative morals that force the reader to think and mentally apply similar situations to their own lives. These stories bridge the gap of time, making them pertinent to society regardless of the day and age they were written in. Unfortunately, the myth of Talibak is not even close to the same caliber as the two aforementioned myths. Obviously, it is shorter, but beyond that, it is overall more basic and less powerful due to the morals it presents and audience it reaches. It is a specialized myth, not broad and far-reaching like excerpts from the Bible or Iliad, causing it to be irrelevant to modern society. The myth of Talibak is truly a hit or miss for readers. On one end, it gives amazing insight into a culture that many of us have never fully understood or recognized. After all, it's not every day you learn about a secluded culture and their uncanny way of life. On the other, it comes off as irrelevant to modern society, and therefore is just another story to read and then forget. Outside of the excellent advice and showmanship of resourcefulness, this myth is irrelevant to modern society. Think about it. The myth is old and outdated. It comes from a barren and desolate area far from modern civilization, the danger and lifestyle of which we can't even mentally grasp. And it focuses heavily on shamanism, something modern society is ill-fitted to understand and accept. Is it no wonder this myth is irrelevant to modern society? It's just too different for many of us to grasp and learn from. It's not that the myth is bad. It's just not intended for modern society readers. You could call it the plight of the Arctic Circle. Anything above it has a hard time both finding its way down and making an impact when it has.